Radar Station 31. You read me? Found something in the ice. We need some help down here. Can anybody hear me? We found something. We found something. We found something.
Let's start with bringing out TK Carter. Next, let's bring out Tom Waits. David Clennen. And finally, Joel Polis.
Unless he gets it, unless his plane lands in the next 10 minutes.
Testing? Testing? No? Right here? Right here?
Nope.
It ain't working.
Test, check,
You know, Rick
test.
James be pissed off. I'm gonna tell you something right now. It's colder than hell. It's freezing. I don't really dig the cold and shit. It's just. They say us.
Check. There we go.
No.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
No.
That's on. That's on. Check.
Thank you very much. Jackson would have been pissed off if his mic wouldn't.
All right, guys. First and foremost, let's talk. Tell the audience about being height aroused.
Come on, Tommy.
I was never height-arized.
I was.
You tell him, TK.
All right, so we're testing. Oh yeah, so we went to the top of Alaska. I was the only black person up there they had probably ever seen. And they take, oh yeah, Keith David, I forgot. I was height-arized. I didn't know if another brother was up there, but it was, we went to a little bar up on the side of this on the other side of town, and it was near Hyder, Alaska. This town, the first thing we saw was a big guard shack that had been blown up, and they ran the sheriff out of that town, so there was no law in this town, but there was a bar. And they had some alcohol called to be Hyder-ized. And it was probably 200 proof grain alcohol, Nookie Thompson, that kind of moonshine liquor. And you had to drink this one shot, and it burned so bad it felt like your chest was on fire.
They lit it on fire before you drank it.
Yeah.
Lit it on fire, literally, and then you drank it in one straight shot. And the headache and the hangover the next day. I remember looking at this glacier thinking, either this glacier is moving, or I have a really bad hangover.
Yeah, we were in a small town. We were in a mining town, and where we shot up in Alaska, and it was amazing because a lot of miners were up there. So if you saw a kid that was 20-something years old, a guy looked like he was 40 or 50. You know, I've never seen so many people without teeth, but they were cool. We were freaking out because we couldn't bring no women up there. Remember that? So any girl that we saw in the cafe, she could look like crazy. She shouldn't look good, you know.
My experience with the Hyder-izing, it was 180 proof. It was called Everclear. Does anybody know that drink?
Oh yeah.
And when you were new to the town, you'd go to this bar in Hyder there. They had a huge, it was like a cut plank of wood, and the bartender would put this shot in front of you and say, you're about to be Hyder-ized. You have to drink this in one drink. If you need to take a second drink of it, or if if you spill any, you have to buy everybody in the bar a drink. So Kurt Russell, I went to graduate school, and Kurt was always making fun of me and thinking that I couldn't hold my liquor or whatever, and he said, I'm going to get you hired on. So he brought me up to the bar, and he was laughing and ready for me to spit the stuff out. And I looked at him, and the guy went through the ritual about you're about to be high-rise, and I picked up the shot, and I looked at Kurt, and I went, now, what do you think I can do that? And this stuff just burned the back of your throat. It was amazing. But we all had to go through that when we got up there.
Yeah, we drank a lot. We drank a lot. We drank. Well, I did. I think I quit drinking.
I had a great time, but you guys are beating each other back.
Yeah, it was amazing because you know, that town was. I think I met my first redneck that night. And I think the only television show they had was Jefferson's, and he thought I was George. Remember that? He thought I was George Jefferson. You George Jefferson? I started saying, Weezy. Oh, George Jefferson, Weezy. But we had a great time. So you know, Joel was showing me some of the pictures of that he shot while we were doing this this movie. And it just brought back great memories because I'm glad we even got back alive when we were on our way up there. Before we even got to Hyder, Alaska, we stopped at a little place to get something to eat, watched a little Monday Night Football. We got back on the bus and we ran into a real bad snowstorm. And we were on the bus. All of a sudden, everybody, we were drinking this Canadian beer, which is the alcohol content level, and that is just like, you know, you drinking, We're drinking this beer, right? We kind of get a little buzz on and getting this bad snowstorm, and all of a sudden the bus starts sliding. I'm talking about sliding, like we're laughing, all of a sudden it just starts sliding, and it stops. And I remember Tommy got out the bus. What happened? Tommy got out the bus and tell me the story.
Well, we were in a whiteout, and the bus driver slid over the edge. And if you look straight, we would have been dead.
Hollywood Reporter.
I mean, it would have been the end of us. And we were all in this bus hanging over this ledge, and Kurt got out and crawled to the front of the bus, and he said, okay, start at the back of the bus and get out one at a time. And we got out, right? And we pushed the bus back on the road, and we made it there, you know, safe and alive. But John Carpenter was waiting for us, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. He was waiting, and he shook each man's hand as we got off the bus.
Yeah, why he took a helicopter up, we took a bus. And it was amazing.
From Michael.
We gotta say one thing. We gotta say one thing about Joe, the bus driver. Remember we said, Joe, are you all right? And Joe had a cigarette. Come on, Mike.
So, makeup effects were a big part of this film. David, talk about the time that you spent being made up for Paul.
Well, they started me off with making a life mask and teaching me how to breathe through a couple of straws that were placed up my nose, and waiting for the algae. They called it algae, waiting for the algae to set, so they would get an impression of my face and then take that to their workshop and build things, and then do a mask of me and then build things on that mask that they could manipulate for the camera. And because I'd like to claim that it was all acting when I transformed into the monster, I'd like to say that's 4 years back. But the truth is, I wasn't even there when they did all that stuff. You know, the extent of my acting was sitting on the couch, and then it was all magic by Rob Bottin after that, starting with the life mask and then all of the artwork that they did on top of that. Charlie Hallahan's head stretch and fall off his body and sprout spider legs and walk out of the room. It was just incredible, and there was nothing computer generated as far as I know. It was all the real. Yeah,
So-
good question.
So you guys are all stage actors, and you get there and you have to take direction from John Carpenter, who this is essentially his second film. How would you take that as training actors? Joel, I know you had some thoughts on this in the last time we spoke.
Well, John was very smart in hiring actors who had trained on the stage and were used to working in an ensemble on a stage. And we rehearsed the movie for 2 weeks before we actually began shooting it, which he later said he thought it was a waste of time that we had actually rehearsed it for 2 weeks. But it wasn't, because you can really see the relationships and the involvement of everybody in the film. And it was invaluable because we already were working together. We didn't know each other, most of us. I had just met Tom in New York. I just thought it really benefited the film in terms of 12 men stuck in an ice station with nowhere to run and living together like on board a ship, like a Bounty or something. There was nowhere to go. And so Keith and Tom were from Juilliard, and David and Richard and myself were from Yale, and Charlie was from ACT, and Donald Moffat was from the Royal Academy. And we had, a nice mix of stage actors and film actors. And I just thought it came out in the filming, and it's partly why the film holds up so well over the years, is because you have these real relationships going on as the film is progressing.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was from the LA Actors Theater. It was amazing because that was the first time I met Donald Moffat, because he was one of the founders of the LA Actors Theater. Yeah, it was amazing. He talked about the training. I remember the first day we had a read-through, and all of us guys were just sitting down there shaking each other's hand. We were like, we're gonna be together for a long time. And we were there for a long time. Being in the same stage, pretty crazy. And it's 6 to 8 months on a movie is a long time. You either gotta like the people you're working with, or you just don't like what we like each other.
There's a ton of tension in the film. Did any of that spill over into the everyday? Was there actually real life tension between the actors?
Well, just when people got drunk at night at the bar. There was one night where I remember seeing Keith. David was leaning on the bar, and he had a drink called a Flaming Fuzzy Mother. And they would light it up, and on his fourth one, I literally saw this. I never saw this before in my life. He drank it, he put it down, and he slid hit the floor. Four of us, young, strong, we picked him up, we put him in the back of the pickup truck, we drove back to the motel, we picked Keith up out of the, did you know this? We picked Keith up out of the back of the bed. We carried him up to John Carpenter's room, and we sat him up against the door of John's room. We were drunk too, and so so John comes over, falls in on him. Keith falls in and hits him, and we all ran away. And that was, so there was some tension, but we released it. Although I remember once, Donald Moffat, we kept him up at night in British Columbia, and we woke him up because we were coming in late, and he was in his 40s, mid-40s, married, kids and all that. This was a job, and he was furious. As a matter of fact, I finally begged his forgiveness about 2 months ago when I ran into somebody who knew him and was in touch with him. And I said, would you tell Donald that I apologize profusely for keeping him awake all those hours when we were shooting the thing?
So, Tom, let's start with you. How much freedom did John give you guys to make the characters your own?
He gave us a lot of freedom, in regards to your question about being theater actors, and it didn't prevent in any way, I mean, you know, John, Kurt, you know, these guys are big, successful Hollywood, you know, icons in many ways. And, you know, I come from New York, and I'm like, you know, this method, New York actor. And they would look at me sometimes like, you know, what are you guys doing, discussing your motivation? Because to them, you know, especially Kurt, he manages to do all that stuff without ever showing it. You know, he doesn't ever show the seams. He doesn't ever show the craft. He just does it, executes on it. And John was very patient. And it's interesting because after we rehearsed for 2 weeks, he had private meetings with each one of us to talk about our characters. So that shows you right there that he had a much deeper interest than he pretended to have in the development of the characters. And he let me, as you know, name my character Windows and Mac before there were any computers. And it was cool, you know, it was like, that wouldn't have happened had we not had 2 weeks of rehearsal. And yeah, I really loved it. I mean, I kind of pushed the envelope a little bit, and I remember a couple weeks into shooting, we were getting ready to blow up a building, you know, or I forget, it was a big, you know, and I went up to John and I said, excuse me, can I ask you a question? He was like, not now. You know, like, the time for talking was over. And as you get older, you learn these things. You know, you learn to leave directors alone. They have a lot of pressure on them. You know, learn when to ask them questions. If any of you have any interest, I don't know if you do. But there is a way to proceed with asking questions. There's a time to ask questions, and there's a time to keep your mouth shut and do your job. But I think that it was a really great convivial working atmosphere. We had a lot of laughs, man. I never laughed so hard in my life. Will Brimley is probably the funniest person. Then you have TK and Keith and Joel and David, and we just laughed and laughed and laughed. I mean,
I'm gonna keep it real. You understand? Because man, that cold ain't nothing to play with. I'm gonna keep it real. You know, I can remember how I even got the role. It was amazing. I had come off a movie called Southern Comfort, and I got a call. My agent called and said, yeah, people over at Universal want to see you for this movie called The Thing. I said, The Thing? See, it's a horror film. I said, yeah, okay, the brother gonna die as soon as the credits start rolling. I said, yeah, black man in a horror film, his ass is gone as soon as the gone. And so they said, no, it's really, man. I said, so what, I got the audition? He said, no, they want to see you for this part. Oh, shoot, they want to give me I took my ass up to Universal and had a meeting with Truman Foster. And they were in the office with John Carpenter, and John Carpenter was there, and I had just saw Halloween and everything. I was like, man, I'm here with John Carpenter, man, John Carpenter. He said, listen, we get ready to do this film. So before you know it, man, I'm in the movie. It was great. Great. So that's how I wound up in the cold.
So, David, I understand that Palmer wasn't the original character that you were set to play.
No, typically I would have played the part of Peter Maloney, who was the meteorologist and geologist. He was the science guy. So they would say, David Clennen, he'll be the science guy. He'll be the guy who, you know, gives you the data and, you know, spills it out like a scientist. And I read the script and I thought these characters are so wonderfully drawn, and a lot of that credit goes to Bill Lancaster, who wrote The Bad News Bears. Does everybody know that already? And he did a fantastic job on this script, which is a whole different type of movie. And he wrote all of these really fascinating characters. And the one that I liked the best was Palmer. And I said, why would I want to, you know, play any other part but Palmer? So I said, I'll read for Bennett. Okay, but I won't go in unless you let me read for Palmer too. So I was very full of myself at the time. I was young and I thought I was hot stuff. And in this case, you know, it was a smart thing to do, but I've tried things like that since and they haven't worked out so well. But this time it worked out, and I got to play the part that I thought it's probably the part I love. I like that part the best of any part I've ever played, and I've been real lucky. I've gotten to play some good parts, but Palmer is just one of those little gems that a screenwriter came up with, and I got real lucky in that. But if everybody in hierarchy had their way, I would have been playing better.
And he had the best death scene too. I remember we shot that day in that room. They had him on this chair tied up or something like this with the hydraulic lifts or something.
Yes.
And they had this I was just laughing. I was like, they got these are low riders. I'm sitting in the chair, when they kick him up like this, man. But that scene where they were testing the blood was probably one of the most intense days because we had to act like we didn't know who was who. And basically, when I read my script, I would pass over that because I didn't know it was him. But he did. Didn't he do a great job? I mean, he did that. He also would pick me up and take me to work too because I didn't know my car was broke or something. Dave used to pick me up. Hey, what time did we ready? He used to live in a big house, big white boy with a big ass house in Hollywood. I'm just 24 years old living in apartments, you understand what I'm saying? He picked me up, hey man, be ready, man, you going to work? Yeah, I'm going to work, pick me up. And I never would say nothing to him really on the way to work. He's kind of wavy, he's a character, he's a professional actor, so he's always. This dude is crazy, man. The thing is really in this dude, man. Man, what a great man, and we thank you fans, man, because man, we knew we were doing something special, but we didn't really know that it was going to be as big as it was. I mean, all over the world. We appreciate you guys, man, because we try to work hard to do what we do.
Well, the film kind of tanked at the box office. It opened shortly after it opened shortly after Blade Runner. Yeah. Somebody get your iPhone out. Tell him he's wrong. But it was overshadowed by another science fiction fantasy film. Okay? And it really didn't do well at the box office. I think Universal Studios was disappointed in the film.
Well, what happened?
The Thing was really going to be big. So it was the fans after the theatrical. It was the fans after the theatrical runs that made it the cultural thing that it is.
What I heard was there was another movie going to open in the slot we opened it called The Cat People with Nastasia Kinski, and it was in such bad shape that they realized that they couldn't open it, and we were slated to open a few months later. But we were done, and the film was ready to go, and Universal got scared because they spent a lot of money on The Cat People, so they pulled it at the last second, like 2 weeks before, and suddenly, before we all knew it, the thing was opening that weekend, and I remember I was in New York when I went to see the screening, and hardly anybody showed up, and I took all my friends with me, and we sat down and it showed, and when it was over, it was like, is that it? I mean, it was very disappointing, and I think the week after we opened, Poltergeist opened, which was a big hit also. And so we kind of got lost in the middle of it, and we thought that was it. It was just going to disappear. And then slowly, over time, it started gaining this fan base. It started showing more and more, and then, I don't know, that for me, about 4 years ago, I got a phone call saying, I think from Tom, saying, are you going to this convention? And suddenly I began to realize how popular the film really was. And since then, I've been gratified and amazed by how many fans there are around the world that really enjoyed this film. And John has said that it's the best film he ever made. So, how nice it.
Yeah, he did say
fun.
that. He came to, I teach acting, and he came to one of my acting classes in Los Angeles. This is a long time ago, late 90s. He came to my class, and one of the students said to him, "What's your favorite film?" And he had done a lot of films by that point. And he stopped. The one I did with him, meaning me.
He was just saying.
Scary movie, man.
It's a very scary movie, but he also made Starman.
Yeah, it was a great movie.
And They Live.
That was amazing.
Those are
Well,
two
that
of
was
my
what was
favorites.
really interesting. After Starman, because I enjoyed Starman. You guys know Starman? Yeah. So I went to see that, and Jeff Bridges was wonderful in that. And John was on some set of Christine or something, maybe a little bit later. And I said, "Gee, John, Starman was great." And he went, "Oh, that's sentimental crap?" He said, "I can do that. That's easy. That's not how I see the world." And it was the first time I got a glimpse into how John really perceives the world that we live in. And They Live, The Thing, Halloween, Escape from New York. And I thought, wow, what a pessimist. Is a nihilist, anarchist. I thought he's crazy. But man, I'm looking around the world right now and I'm thinking, wow, it's pretty prescient that he saw what was going on back then and just was projecting into the future. Really interesting man, John. Very, very accomplished.
Okay, so I guess I'm just a big sissy because I like Starman. It's a happy ending, right?
I'm a sissy too. I really like it.
So we talked about Palmer's death. Tom, talk about Windows death. Talk about shooting Mets.
So I remember we had broken after shooting for a long period of time, and I'd gone back to New York, and then they flew me in for the death scene. And it had been a long time, seeing everybody was kind of a strange moment, reacclimating to the environment. And then after a few minutes, I got right back into it, and like, this is your death scene, and it's me and Palmer. And I remember them holding me upside down and shaking back and forth. And
I was doing that, man. That was me.
Tell about the scene I laughed about when you died, they put the big legs with the strings on you. Oh,
Yeah, that was funny.
y'all see that thing? He's in the corner, he's on fire. And it's actually doing like this. Going like this, right?
just like that.
So there's two guys, these chords, man, a lot of fire in film. It's straight barbecue if you don't know what you're doing, right? Boom! And action! Woo! Start screaming, Tommy. Yeah. Guys, chord. But that's some of the magic that happened in it. With Palmer's, what was that? Charlie's hands on the body.
Yeah.
They used a real amputee who came in. I said, "Who's this dude with no arms up in here, man?" Goes in the chest, and I think there's the rubber arms in there. It was just crazy, man. And when we weren't shooting on those sets and they turned the lights off, if you walked on those stages, and they had the monsters still up in there and the crows in position, it's freaky, man. It's freaky, man. I'm scary anyway. It's pretty freaky. But yeah, man, crazy stuff. Your death was. You didn't know how I died because they ran out of money.
One last question for me before we turn it over to the audience. There's a lot of themes in The Thing that some we can look at, I'm sure, retroactively and notice, the tension. Joel, we had talked, I think, in Indy about, was this a metaphor for HIV at the time? And that was one, I know you and Richard had a little dialogue between them, but what do you guys think is the strongest theme of The Thing?
The strongest theme?
Yes.
Paranoia.
Okay.
Hey.
It's Joel, man.
I know.
What do you think was the strongest theme? Huh? You're on.
No, I think you're right. It's as said before, it's these men who are in a pressure cooker and they don't know, they're all trying to survive and they don't know who to trust. And that's really, and that could be the Ebola, imagine the Ebola virus in that scenario, or HIV, or there's somebody with, there's a killer who you don't know. It's anything that's life-threatening. And men are trying to survive in that situation. So it's who you trust. And as Tom just put in one word,
It's sort of like the killer that they catch. You know, oh, he was such a nice guy. All the guy's got to do is come out of his house one day, got dead bodies in the house. Once a month, he come in, hey, John, how you doing? Good to see you. That'll hold him for about 2 weeks.
All right, who has a question from the audience?
Hi. What was the scene with the dog transforms into the show? What was the guy actor dressed as a dog? The one that cut the
it wasn't an actor dressed as a dog. It was they built a dog. They built a dog. They built several dogs, actually. And one went like this.
Yeah, that's not the only thing ever. I love that scene where the dog transforms out and monster comes
Yeah.
out. I just love that scene.
Yeah. They built all that. Rob Bottin, who was 23 years old at the time, who did all the special effects.
Nancy,
You should have seen this guy. He
don't
was
try that at home.
big burly guy with long hair and long beard. He's 23 years old. He looks like he's 40. And he was on fire for a year designing these things for John and then building them and making them work. It was extraordinary to see this stuff happen in front of him. TK was talking about rehearsing the scene with the flamethrower. I mean, that was all working stuff. I mean, it was pretty exciting and scary.
Dangerous movie to be on.
You know how those tentacles come out of the dog and they grab onto other things? That was filmed in reverse. They set the tentacles up all at their full extension, then shot it in reverse as they pulled the tentacles in. So when they run the film in the right sequence, it looks like they're all laying out there, and they did some very simple things that were very powerful in their effect.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
They invented a lot of new cinematic techniques to get those particular special effects, like the tentacles.
Your head rolling down the hallway and the dude with the remote control. I'm going, damn, this is good. Let's talk about the roller skates. I mean, yeah.
So who else? Sir, go to the back.
Oh, I was going to ask, what is all of your different takes on the end of the movie? Is kind of left open as to, we'll just kind of hang out, chill out, I guess, for a while and see what happens. What do you all?
It's a great ending. He shot 2 endings. I forget what the other one was. But he shot 2 endings, and that's the one he chose, and I thought, it's just fantastic, because you're going like, what? You know?
Yeah, one of the endings I think it was I'm going like, what happened to me?
I think everybody who saw the movie probably left the theater thinking, what happened to T.K. Carter?
I came all the way up to Alaska for this. Listen, the day it happened, I come to work, right? And it was, I forgot, you know what, I have the original script at home. I'm going to find that script. I have the original script. Oh yeah, I should have bought it today. 10,001 going out 10,000 twice. I had the original script, and I was looking, and I'm going to find out what happened, but I get to work one day, and this is my dying scene. This is right after my plan puts the head, came in the face, and dragging down the thing. I'm going, okay, what's going to happen with me, John? John said, we're going to have to talk. I said, what are we going to talk about? He says, we're having budget problems right now. And I said, so, you know, I like to die in films like Charlton Heston. I like to grab shit, you know, just. So he said, you're just gonna walk down and you're gonna look around like you're looking for something and we'll take it from there. Well, take it from there. He said, yeah, just walk down there and then go in that room. So I look at the movie, I'm at the movie, the little premiere that they have, and I'm walking down and I got the close shot on me, and all of a sudden I walk in the room and I hear this. I didn't know if that was a toilet flush or a garbage disposal or bad sound in that scene right there.
How did you die?
I don't know to this day. I'm gonna go and do a stand-up tour talking about, do you know how I died in that film?
Right here, you got a question.
The practical effects of the thing are just outstanding. Some of the best of all time. Do you think you'd be able to do the same?
They say that the other movie called The Thing was the director of that movie was so respectful of John Carpenter's version that he tried to capture the same look in the film. And I heard that he really did bring back a lot of the non-computer effects, and I heard that the studio didn't like the way it looked, so they slapped some special computer effects on it and released it that way. But that's rumor at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a corner.
Good question.
I actually have the storyboards. TK's character was supposed to be attacked by a box monster, and they ran out of budget, so that Bravo team was going to create this creature that emerges out of the box by the packing boxes. It was huge because it was part of the Blair monster that
Right.
broke off,
Right.
and it was going to rip his head off. But at the last minute, they decided to fix the whole thing, which is unfortunate because it looked awesome. It would have been much better ending for your character rather than other than you being the hero.
Just take the brother head off. See?
Rather than you disappear.
Just take his Jerry curl and just take it off.
One of my favorite scenes in the film is in the first 15 minutes when Superstition is playing and the dog goes to the room and walks into the room and you see a silhouette turn around. I'd always wondered if you guys could discuss, is that supposed to be Palmer or is it supposed to be Norris? And if it was you, were you advised, were you directed to maybe sort of act different than you really were supposed to be because you were an imitation?
No, that I never got any direction like that, but Joel just
They added that because the film changed from when we shot it in Los Angeles. Once we got up to Alaska, John had added a bunch of scenes. He included the exteriors. Up until that point, it was all happening in the rec room, and really it was very intense. But he opened the film up and he added a bunch of scenes. For instance, I was killed originally. I was hung at the door with a shovel in my. And John looked at it and said, "That's a slasher movie. What am I thinking? This is not how an alien creature trying to survive would do this." So he changed a lot of different things in the film when we got to Alaska, and that was one of them. And so we hadn't arrived, or we had already left when they shot that scene. That was the producer, one of the producers, Larry Franco, his silhouette on the wall, but none of us were told who it was supposed to be, and that's for this exact reason. You don't know who it is, which elicits in the audience, well, who is it? Let's go. You were as in the dark as we were.
Going back to what everybody thinks might have happened, and going on your take of, looking into John Carpenter's mind. I read a while back on the internet, almost 10 years ago, something about the social commentary of, because it was such an isolated place, that like people that are isolated in situations like that, they go crazy and kill each other. There was that kind of perspective of maybe
around 1951, the Howard Hawks version. The McCarthy era, the trials were going on, and the last line in the movie, I believe, is "Look to the skies, look to the skies." Everybody was freaked out about nuclear war and the communists taking over the United States. So that also was injected in that particular film. Right. You know, it's any situation where people are scared for their lives and they don't know who's threatening them or where it's going to come from. So, I mean, that can, in every era of human existence, there's some situation. I mean, look at how they're scaring the shit out of us with, terrorism. You know, just everybody's on alert. Everybody's paranoid. Everybody's discussing each other. You're a Republican. You're a Democrat. Everybody's at odds with each other, and they want us to be there because we're manipulatable at this point. You know, we can be controlled. So it's an interesting idea.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question.
Not a question, but honestly, I think you guys were the best special effect in there because, like, the way you all came together was so believable. It's the first R-rated movie that I snuck into as a kid, and you guys scared the shit out of me because I believed you were scared. I believed you were scared. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Identify a scene from a movie. What's it called? I've seen it. And there was talk about a year and a half ago of doing a version of that game focusing on the thing. And I keep waiting for this. I was asked if I would give, you know, permission or whatever.
Wait much longer, we're going to be dead.
No thing.
Well, I want to thank you guys for taking